Welcome to the Limitless Ladies in Leadership podcast. I'm your host, Danielle, and I've created a space for the many powerful, creative, and limitless female leaders to share their stories. From female CEOs to professional athletes and doctors, every powerful woman has a story to tell. There's no guarantee where this podcast will take us, so welcome to the unfiltered, unedited, and badass space for all women to align. If you're enjoying the podcast, don't forget to show some love on Patreon at Limitless Ladies in Leadership. But for now, welcome to the show. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the first official interview and episode 2 of the Limitless Ladies in Leadership podcast. I am your host, Danielle, and today, as promised in episode 1, we're starting off this episode with a bang! I am joined, you'll see why this is so funny later. I am joined by my guest, Lauren White. Lauren is a badass babe, one of my closest friends, and a woman of confidence and composure. She goes by the name She-Wolf Lauren on Instagram and is the founder of Amber Bath Company and The Sex Den, the woman-powered blog and Instagram show featuring women of all walks of lives sharing their stories of intimacy and sexual empowerment. Lauren breaks boundaries with The Sex Den, featuring topics such as self-pleasure, threesomes, anal, and so much more. She empowers women to explore their own feminine existence and communicate with their partners on what they desire. I'm going to leave Lauren to do the rest of her story. So without further ado, I welcome my friend, Lauren. Hi.
Hi. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to need you to send me that bio because that was so beautifully written. And we were just joking before we hit record that every time I do a podcast or an interview, I literally I go frantically to my website. I'm like, how do I describe myself? I forgot. Because
I got you. Don't worry.
Yeah, that sounded so good. Thank you. Oh, I'm so glad to be here.
And I'm so happy. Lauren is the one who interviewed me on episode 1. If you guys have not checked that out already, you should do it. But today, it's all about you, Lauren. So I can't wait to dive into our topics. But first, we're going to start off every episode asking this question. So what does the word limitless mean to you?
Oh, okay, hang on. Dramatic pause. Gosh, limitless to me means, I guess a synonym that I would think of is the word freedom. It kind of just means without bounds or without regulation. I imagine the hair that I no longer have flowing in the wind and just kind of going in whatever direction I want. Like, you know, fuck you, fuck the system. I'm going to be living freely. That's how I feel.
Yeah. And actually, this wasn't a topic I was going to bring up, but speaking of which, you have no hair, not because of something happening, but because you decided one day to cut it all off. Let's start with that story. How did that happen?
Oh my gosh. Okay, sure. You know, it's so funny because I forget. I mean, I've known you with both. I knew you way before I shaved my head.
Yeah.
And you know, speaking of limitless, it was kind of part of my limitless journey, my limit-free journey was shaving my head. So I had always wanted to do it. I had a friend who was a photographer and he was like, God, I just love women with shaved heads. And I think it was the first time I voiced it. I was like, I am going to shave my head one day. And so I had different boyfriends and I'd say like, I'm going to shave my head kind of as a joke. And everybody would say, you can't shave your head. You have the best hair ever. And honestly, I do have really good hair.
Yeah, I'll vouch for that.
It's like yours. It's like thick, black, dark hair, long, like really long. And I just really got sick of identifying with my hair, modeling with my hair, people talking about my hair, me hiding behind my hair. And finally, I was with my most recent ex, Jason, and I just said, dude, I want to shave my head. And he said, do it. I'll shave it for you. And I was like, okay, don't say it. Don't say it if you don't mean it because I'm going to do it.
How empowering.
So I did it. I just shaved it and I didn't have much of a reason other than I just wanted to, which was kind of interesting. And then I didn't have much of a timeline. Like I had no idea if I was going to keep it shaved, if I was going to grow it out. And now it's been a year and a half and I just shaved it this morning. Like, I don't think I'm going to go back anytime soon. It feels like it's so me.
Yeah. So when you first made this transition, you know, the first thing that comes to mind is like, you know, Britney Spears did hers and she got all this backlash and people called her crazy. And like, did you experience any of that?
No, I didn't. As a person, so when I did it, I was in a relationship, very stable, like, you knew Jason, in a very stable relationship. And being single now, it's a little bit different. People ask me about it more. And especially with men, I kind of have like a little bit more of I don't really know how to explain it, but a lot of people who are like, so are you planning to grow your hair back out? Or like, why'd you do that? And I'm like, well, no, but I'm more insecure about it a little bit than I ever have been because of the dating world. Like, people love women with hair. Hair is sexy, so there's like this thing within me, but no, nobody really thought I was going nuts.
That's good.
Yeah. Especially because I don't really drink. I don't smoke weed. Like, there was no excuse. It wasn't like, oh my God, Lauren's going off the deep end and she shaved her head. It was just sort of like, I wanted to do it.
Yeah. So I think, like, seriously, just backtracking to you talking about your amazing hair, because your hair is amazing when it's long. Yeah. And like, when you first mentioned shaving your head, or actually, I feel like maybe you didn't say anything, huh? You just did it. And
I never said a word about it. Yeah. I just did it. Yeah.
And I remember seeing there was a picture you had on Instagram where you were holding like the ponytail in your hand.
Yeah.
And I just remember when I saw your photo, I was like there was like so many emotions, because I was like, no, your hair is so amazing. But then at the same time, I was like, but you're like one of those people that is goddamn sexy with a shaved head. So you rock it.
Thank you. Yeah. It's pretty crazy. It's crazy. It's actually taught me a lot about femininity and just like my own perception of myself, because I've always identified as somebody who like wants to be more feminine. Like, I've always had this, I'm very muscular. I have strong features. I have like a big nose, big cheekbones, big jawline. I know you're identifying with this.
I was like, me too. Yeah.
Yeah. We have very similar bodies.
Yeah.
And, but I always just had this like more muscular tone to me. And even when I had hair, I had almost like a nervousness about being masculine, even though I am a little bit masculine. Like, instead of just owning that part of me, I always was kind of resentful of that identity. And so shaving my head has kind of been something where I'm like, wow, I'm really feminine, but I'm also okay with being perceived in this sort of like androgynous, interesting way. It's just different.
It's interesting for me is like looking back at you with hair compared to now. Like, I feel like you explore your feminine side so much more today. And, that's going to be a big part of our topics today. But It's interesting how that worked out.
Yeah. Oh, it's really interesting how it worked out. It's really interesting. Even my style, like my styles become more edgy. I really like, I feel sexier. And I think that it's not just about my head, but I can see a very marked distinction in my life between, okay, when I shaved my head, it kind of, things really started to pick up for me. Like, I realized, all right, I want to talk about sexual confidence. I'm going to leave Jason. Like, that happened. And it wasn't until I shaved my head that I can almost say exactly then it was like, I was breaking free. Like, I had this very free kind of like chest rip open, soul, crashing experience. So, yeah.
Yeah. So because it seems like you're free to talk about Jason, is that an okay topic here?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
And Jason, as you know, but for our listeners, Jason's somebody that I've met and, we've spent some time together and, there's a lot of really good qualities about him and you guys, you had an amazing relationship, but I want to dive into something about not so much focused on him, but just about that relationship is you were in an open relationship with Jason.
Yeah,
so
I was.
Was that your first time experiencing something like that?
That's a great question. Yes. So when I was in college and into grad school, I had a long-term boyfriend. We kind of dated on and off for like 4 years. And he and I wanted to have an open relationship, but didn't know how to go about it. I was really insecure. He was insecure in certain ways. But we both were like very sexual people. So we'd kind of be together and then want to be with other people. So we'd break up and it was just kind of a mess. And it felt like shit. It just was not a good situation. And so when we broke up, I was then in multiple very monogamous, very vanilla relationships because I felt like, okay, well, that didn't really work for me. I want to be in something that's so, clear cut, like it's just the two of us. So that was really only a couple people that I dated that it was like that. And then I met Jason, and he and I, right from the very second we met, he had just gotten out of a longer relationship and had a son. And he was like, look, this is a part of me. I've been a very sexual person and involved in the swinging community and like sex parties and sex clubs since I was like 19. I've never brought it into a relationship. And so it was both of our first time exploring like a fully open relationship. And it was because of that dynamic that I really, it like kickstarted this whole portion of my life, this very sexually exploratory part of me. Yeah. So
wow.
it was a bit like the biggest learning curve ever. I mean, it shattered a lot of my, I'm kind of ranting here, but it kind of shattered a lot of my perceptions about being slutty and slut shaming and preferences and communicating about sex, all of it.
And I'm so excited you said that because those are so many of the topics I have on my list to bring up today. So I just want to kind of talk about, we're talking about open relationships and threesomes and stuff right now. So what do you think is one of the most important things when, entering this? And obviously we're talking about two consensual adults here, but like as far as communication, are there rules? Are there certain things that should be discussed? Like I'm sure we have plenty of listeners right now that, maybe they've thought about it, but they're terrified of it. So what's the little like summary of how to go about that?
I mean, it really depends on the relationship, and that's kind of a boring answer. So I'll elaborate a little bit, but I have met so many swinging couples and so many people who are in open relationships, and no two relationship has the same exact boundaries. So what's really important is to express yourself openly and honestly, because if you hide things from your partner or you don't say certain things that you want and then you end up doing it anyway, that's just not going to go well. So imagine having a conversation where you communicate about what you truly want, regardless of how the other person may take it. And that's kind of like a key part of this is if you already don't feel like you can have honest communication in your relationship, having an open or a swinging situation probably isn't going to work very well for you. But yeah, I think it's really like you have to have great communication when you bring anybody else in, because there's a lot of emotion that comes up. People think that there isn't jealousy. They'll say, oh, how are you not jealous? How do you not get possessive? Or how do you watch your partner with somebody else? And at the end of the day, there is jealousy. There are times when you're like, oh, that didn't feel great, but you talk about it.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it's different for every single couple, and it's different for every person, and it will be different relationship to relationship. I'm single now and I'm dating, and it's kind of this like interesting new world because I'm so open and free sexually, but then I'll meet people who aren't. And I'm like, could I go back? Like, could I do just a monogamous thing? Like if I meet someone that I really like, I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah.
So, oh gosh, I have so many questions about the whole open relationship thing. So, obviously, like, as you mentioned, there can be some boundaries and the communication is really important. So what are some of either your personal boundaries that you've set with people or that people have set with you?
Okay, so some of the boundaries, and by the way, I just want the listeners to know that I've talked with Jason at length about this, and he's okay with me sharing this stuff. I just want that to be known. Like, he's given me full consent to talk about this. So our boundaries were mandatory condoms with every new partner. At first, we would tell each other after an experience happened. And And then it changed to, okay, we want to know before. So just a text. And at the time, Jason traveled all the time for work. So it would be like, if he was out for work, he could sleep with other people and vice versa. Like I could too. If we were in the same city or if we were together, most of the time it meant that we played together. So like we wouldn't go on dates. We weren't polyamorous. It was like more ethically or socially monogamous. And then when we were traveling or together, it was more open. And some of that stuff shifted, whatever. But the bottom line is those were our main rules. No sleepovers. So like nothing that just felt very intimate to me. I find sleepovers very intimate. So it made me super uncomfortable for like women to be sleeping in my bed, if I was out of town or something. It just didn't really feel right. And I'm trying to think. Those were the main ones. Let me know in advance. No sleepovers, condoms, and no like relationship stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if we would have been against that, but we're not polyamorous. It was more just about sex.
Yeah.
So yeah, those were the boundaries.
Now I've heard, and I'm sure you have, especially because you're in this whole thing.
Yeah.
Like people will make comments like, well, if you just took care of your partner better at home, they wouldn't have a reason to go out for someone else. So what's your response to that?
I think that's fair for some people. I don't think that open relationships are for everybody. And there are people who say that really open relationships are the best way to be. It's the way that we were, like it's the most animal way. It's crazy to choose just one partner for the rest of your life. And while I agree with that, I don't think that this is for everyone. So I think some people have a higher sex drive than others, and variety is part of sexuality for so many people. So I would urge those same people to say, okay, well, is your partner masturbating to anybody but you?
Right.
Is your partner fantasizing about anybody but you? Is your partner cheating? Have they cheated? Because cheating is rampant. Infidelity is rampant. And so even if you're taking care of your partner, which by the way, puts a ton of pressure on you for the rest of your life to constantly take care of your partner. But even if that's the case, even if people are feeling satisfied sexually, a lot of times they cheat.
Yeah.
So it's like every relationship is different in that way. But yeah, I would say explore your options, sister, if that's what you think.
Yeah. Yeah. And just going back to that communication, like if it's something you're interested in and just really like for me, I'm thinking if this was something that I was going to enter into and I, I'm in a serious relationship and I'm thinking about like letting my partner go out or bringing another girl in or something like that, just really like having that discussion and having that closeness with my partner that like, hey, this is okay. But once it gets to this point, I don't know if I'm okay with that. Yeah, we can go to the strip club and go get a dance or bring home a girl, but like, she's not going to stay the night or like, I don't really want you hooking up with her outside of this or, whatever that boundary is for each person. But no, I think that's great. And in a way, like I was thinking as you're talking, it seems like you may have way better conversation with your partners than most of us do. And that's so ideal for a relationship.
I mean, it's one of the main, so I do one-on-one coaching, and it's one of the main concerns I get is people do not know how to talk about sex with their partners because sex is something that a lot of people perceive as you either have sexual compatibility with your partner or you don't. And it should just be easy. It's like with communication. I have my bachelor's and my master's in communication, and I would tell people I'm getting my master's in communication, and people would say, well, isn't that just easy? And I said, well, okay, look at your life. What are most of your arguments about? Most of your arguments and most confusion in life is about communication because no two people experience the same thing ever. No two people do. So even in a communicative interaction, it's like, come on, you're not experiencing the same thing. So there's bound to be some level of disconnect always. And so especially when we're talking about sex and sexuality, it's like there's so much at play here. It's vulnerable. People feel very nervous. There's a so so much different pleasure issues as we get older. We can have, introducing erectile dysfunction or dryness or pain with sex or having children. Like your sexuality changes so much throughout the course of your life.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, I'll say this, never, ever had I had better communication about my sexuality than when I was in an open relationship.
Yeah.
And I am so grateful for that because of that communication, I was also able to realize that was not a relationship for me. Like it wasn't fulfilling me in the ways that I needed to be fulfilled by myself.
Yeah. And I mean, I can say that when we first met, this didn't come up like a whole lot in the beginning, but after we started like talking and having a closer friendship and we would have these conversations about this and like they're, it totally piqued my interest. And I just like, there was some level, I wouldn't call it jealousy because that's kind of negative, but of envy that was like, oh my God, like the connection you have with your partner, just the open talk that like, and when I would experience you two together and he would like openly talk about how, oh, look at that girl outside. She's hot. Like, that'd be an amazing experience. And there wasn't a reaction from you that was like, shut the fuck up. Like, whatever. Yeah. It was just like, yeah, she is hot. Cool. And it was just so like, oh my God, what a freaking amazing relationship. Even if you didn't take that to bringing in a person to the bedroom or, having an open relationship, even just to acknowledge that we are all humans and we all find people beautiful in different ways. And like, I shouldn't feel guilty to tell my partner, I think that person's good looking. It doesn't mean I'm going to do anything,
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I think that there are levels of like, there are absolutely levels of open relationships, but what remains important to me is that level of honesty. Like, God, and honesty, it's a kind of a buzzword. It's like, okay, be honest, be vulnerable. And it's like, yeah, that's great. But what about when you want to be honest and it might hurt the other person? What about when you want to be honest and it might be something that is really like socially unacceptable? Those things are hard because when you put your real self out there, when you put your real face forward, that means that when somebody denies you or when somebody rejects you, they're rejecting the real you. Yeah. And that hurts more.
Yeah.
Like, I really think it does. So you have like, that's ultimate confidence to me, is being able to express yourself in a way that's like, okay, this is truly how I feel. This is truly my expression right now. And if you reject it, you're rejecting all of me. So, or not all of me, but you're rejecting my true feelings, not like this facade.
Right.
So yeah, that didn't answer your question at all, but yes, it does feel good to be able to go out and just say that person's hot, or to have like some kind of a sexual energy with somebody else and not have your partner freak out
and not feel like guilty about it or whatever.
Yes. Yeah, especially for like, I'm a very sexual person and I didn't I've become even more of a sexual person, which is unbelievable. Like, I realized that I like basically have a dick fetish. Like, I love men. I love them. Like, not their hearts, but their dicks.
And you know what? Even just that statement right there, like, so much power to you, because like you said, with these perceptions of like, she's a slut, she's a whore, and I'm not talking about you, but like anybody who would use this kind of language, people automatically jump to these like, oh, guys can sleep around and they're the man and they're, whatever. But like, girls do that and she's a slut. And so what did it take from you to just let that boundary down and just be like, you know what? I fucking love it, and I don't care what you think.
Yeah. Oh, God, that's a good question. I think that it's been an accumulation of things over time that have really added up to me feeling this way. And I've always known this. Like, as a kid, I actually had a conversation with my dad recently, because this has stirred up, like, what I do, especially when I was doing OnlyFans, has stirred up a lot for my family, because I had a very secure childhood. I had a very, fortunate financial situation. My parents paid for my college. They supported me through grad school in various different ways. Like, it was, I didn't have like a troubled background per se.
Yeah.
So my parents perceived me getting into this sexuality space as like, oh my God, we did something wrong. There must be something going on. What's going on with you? And it's like, okay, let's back up here. Think back to when I was a kid. I have always been very sexually curious, like always. I was so boy crazy and so horny, like at a young age. Like I tried to get my boyfriend in middle school to have sex with me and he wouldn't. He's like, we're too young. I'm like, we're not too young, you freak. Like, let's just do it. I wanted to so bad. Like I wanted to shave my legs early. I had huge boobs at a young age. I got my period early. Like I've just been craving femininity and womanhood for so long. But it wasn't really until recently that I started just owning, like I didn't know what I liked sexually. Like even through my whole relationship, my whole past relationship, like I can say that just now, like in the past 6 months, I've been really honing in on like, girl, what do you like? Like I learned how to squirt and all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I love this. I learned my body in ways that I didn't know before. Like I can have really intense orgasms. Like I know that I love big dicks. Like I love that feeling. I love masculinity and I like power play. Like I like to be dominated. And also I want to explore my dominant side. Like I want to have those experiences. And so just talking about it, it's like, it's fun. It's like your body is a playground. Like that's what I've been thinking of. It's like your own personal playground and you, me, we get to explore our own bodies for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
We get to play on our playground. Like there's no reason that we can't explore our pleasure centers and our breath and like touch that makes you feel good. Why the fuck not?
Right.
That's how I feel.
No, I love it. And like, as you're talking, I'm just thinking about like, you know, my growing up that just had so much shame surrounded about sex and don't tell anyone and don't do this and don't do that and blah, and you're bad if you feel this way. And just living that, like we discussed in the first episode, that victimhood and that just like fear and that like, oh, well, if I enjoy this, you know, there's something wrong with me and like, I'm not allowed to enjoy this. I'm here for him versus this. And then like, let me add on to that first one. But still sleeping around because you're trying to feel some sort of validation. I was trying to feel some sort of validation, but not in a healthy way versus you being like, I fucking love sex. And that doesn't make me some sort of negative, like, I don't even want to use the word slut because that can be positive too, you know, but it's like it can be the same actions on both ends, but over here it's playing like victim and getting hurt and not standing in your power and just letting men do whatever without standing up and saying what you like. But over here is having the same amount of sexual partners and just really being like, this is what I want. And it's great.
You know, and it is great. And there's a fine line between it. You know, this just brought up an idea for me because I'm going to write about this because it's something that kind of plagues me because I go through these phases where it's like, I'll have multiple sexual partners at a time, not like at the same time, but that would be fine with me. But, you know, I'll be talking to different men and they have different things that I like. And when we talk even in the dating world, like men having multiple women that they're sleeping with, it's like, oh yeah, he's just dating. He's kind of being a playboy. He's having his fun before he gets married, blah, blah, blah. And I just recently had this epiphany where I'm like, I was giving myself a lot of shame for that and kind of like immediately trying to find my husband. And now I'm like, well, shit, I have these different experiences with different people. And until I find someone that kind of like melds those things together, like, why wouldn't I be sleeping around or like having these different experiences?
Yeah.
At the same time, I still experience shame because I'm a woman and women experience sexual shame. And it comes up for me where I'll be like, okay, I'm not going to sleep with anybody right now because I want my body to be pure. I want to sleep with one person. I want to have one sexual partner where only one person is getting me at a time. And so I go through these ebbs and flows of more sexual liberation, sexual freedom, and then I'll kind of close up like a little clam. I know that clam is kind of like, you know, vagina too, but I'll sort of close up into my shell and have this almost like a shame regression, I guess you can call it, where I'll kind of go back and be like, uh-oh, this isn't good. And like, people aren't going to want to be with me if I'm with a bunch of people and I don't really know how to date or do this. So yes, I'm sexually free. Yes, I really enjoy sleeping with people, men, but there is still shame. And so that's stuff that I work through. And the shame part is less and less and less the more I work through it, but it's there.
Well, I mean, look at our society, though. Like you were saying, like, yeah, lately, and especially if you compare today to 50 years ago, women have so much freedom. But it's still, it's the same perception, though, that if a girl walks into, especially a good-looking girl, if she walks, or I shouldn't say girl, woman, walks into, a room and is just like, I just fucked 2 guys, and everybody's like, and it's like, oh my God, what a whore. A guy does that in front of all of his guy friends and they're like, fuck yeah, high fives everywhere. And like, why the fuck is that? Like that, it sucks. But like, I'm so, I'm so proud of you for like doing it anyway. Like,
thanks. Yeah. It's strange. It's been an interesting journey for me because I've never felt more confident and more empowered. But at the same time, I have this little narrative that's going on in my head because, and I actually recently wrote about this because I'm 28. I'm going to be 29 in October. And I felt like the moment I met Jason, I thought I was going to marry him. We planned to get married almost up until we broke up. Like we really thought that we were going to be married. And now this weird thing is coming over me where it's like, okay, I'm dating, I'm having fun, I'm kind of being wild, but am I too wild for a husband? Like, do I want kids? Do I want a husband? Yeah, I do. And so I'm in this situation now where it's like, okay, Lauren, you have a shaved head, you're a sexual confidence coach, and you like to fuck people. Like, okay, who's going to marry you? Like, I have this little narrative in my head where it's like, if you want to have kids, you do not act in these ways. And so those are statements that keep coming up for me again and again. And I know that this happens to everybody, but probably just at a lesser level. Where it's like this narrative of like being a woman, your time's running out, like find a husband. And if you don't have one, there's something wrong with you. And like, let's get going. That's something that kind of is pervasive for me, but it's not going to stop me.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to hold me back, you know?
And for me, like when I'm hearing you say this and I just see you living, like literally living your life right now, just the limitless part, right? Like no bounds.
Yes.
I'm going to do what I want, but like, I don't mean that in a negative way, like fuck you, I'm going to do what I want, but just I'm going to do what I want without hurting others or without the intention of hurting others and live my life. And realistically, I mean, you got a while before baby maker doesn't work anymore.
Yeah,
so.
Totally. I know. And I do think it would be fun for me to share this fantasy that I've been having recently because I can't get it out of my head. And so we'll see what happens. But I've been feeling so sexually empowered that I want to like coordinate. This is really radical. So you can cut this out if you want.
No, we're leaving it.
Okay. So I have been having this fantasy where like, I am like, kind of like a sex goddess or like a ruler. And I have like these men that I pick and they all come over. I create like a sex den in my house, in my apartment. And it's like lit up and red and purple and like, you know, like a fucking sex lair. And I choose these different men to like bow before me and have sex with me. Like that is a fantasy that I want, but I want to choose them and they know that they're below me. Like I am the ruler. I am the queen. And like, if you get an invite, you're allowed to come, but like, I'm telling you what's happening. You're not doing anything that I don't allow you to do.
Okay, so this brings up an interesting question for me because you mentioned earlier, well, actually you did say both sides, but you had mentioned earlier that you like being dominated in the bedroom. So this is the other side. This is the kind of dominatrix fantasy in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens with it because it's like I love to be dominated, but there's also part of me every time that I'm in a domination situation where I feel like it's not enough. It's interesting. I'm just like, there's so much more going on in my head. So it's fun for me, but I don't feel super fulfilled by it. And there's this lingering thought constantly of like, you need to dominate, you need to dominate, you need to dominate. But I'm afraid. I'm scared. It's scary. But, it makes me nervous. So I know I'm going to do it, but it's just with who and when. We'll see.
This is exciting.
I'll let you know. That can be our next episode.
Yeah. Wow, this is really exciting. So what about sex talk? What about before the whole act happens? Is there sex talk from Lauren? Do you receive well? Do you give well? What does that look like?
What exactly do you mean?
So
like sex talk, like do we talk about consent or?
Oh, no. I know that. Sorry, I'll clear that up. So that is something that I know you're very good at doing and having the open talk. But I mean, like, we're leading into this. Are you rubbing his leg and talking about his cock? Are you like, you know what I mean? Like, is there like this flirtatious sort of thing? Or is it like, let's just go in the bedroom? I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Okay, so like what does it look like leading up to an interaction, basically?
Yeah, and then even
is what you're
in
saying.
the interaction.
Like if I'm getting sex with someone. Yeah.
Yeah, like even
so
in the interaction.
It depends on the partner.
Sorry, I keep cutting you off.
Yeah, it depends on the partner. Yeah, no, I mean, I love this question. It depends on who I'm sleeping with. So if I meet somebody online or something and I think that there's going to be good chemistry, I kind of get a feel for the person before I decide if I want to like have some kind of an interaction with them. And then I also get a feel for them before I decide like, okay, I want him to take charge. Because sometimes like in a dating situation, I like for the man to take charge of the situation, ask me on a date, plan something, because of what I do, I don't like people to assume that I'll just sleep with them. And that happens sometimes because I'm so free on Instagram, because I promote myself as a sexual confidence coach. I get a very people assume that they can just send me a couple messages and I'll be down to fuck. And I'm like, okay, you're not understanding. You're actually going to have to try harder because so many people are doing that. I like when somebody's super dynamic. So anyway, usually I'm pretty touchy. Like if I'm into somebody, I'll touch them. Like I'll touch their shoulder or their knee or something to give them sort of insight, or I'll say like, ooh, I want to kiss you or something like that. And then usually if we kiss, it's going to like lead into something else. But yeah, I love dirty talk. I like it all. I like to try different things. So if you wanted to, I wrote like a dirty talk 101 piece that I think helps people, because I think a lot of people want to talk dirty, but they don't know how. They're like very nervous about it. They think they'll say the wrong thing. So I wrote like a little blog about it.
Okay, that's perfect. We'll link it in the description here, because that's the first thing that comes to my mind is like, I remember, like, as you know, I was a dancer, a stripper many years ago. And I remember that some of the guys would come into the club and they'd be like, talk dirty to me. And like, okay, me, little young, immature Danielle, would be like, I like your penis. Like, you know, it's like, what the fuck, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard.
It is.
I always just say, these are the 3 rules, in my opinion. Describe what you're about to do, describe what you're doing, describe what you just did. And if you want to get crazy with it, throw in some names. So like if you're about to give someone head, you can say like, I'm about to suck your dick so well. Like your eyes are going to roll into the back of your head. Like you can say things like that, and it makes people, it like sets the stage for what's coming next, you know? Or when you're doing it, you can say little things like, even just if you want to start out with like, do you like that? Or like, you know, you insert expletive here. You can say things as you're doing it, just describing the exact motion, because there's something about doing it the same time that you're hearing what's happening that is just such a turn on.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love it. I feel like this is an area that still can get uncomfortable for me, is the actual talking about it. Yeah. It's like if a partner would say, well, do you like them? I don't know. Like, you know, and it's like, it can get uncomfortable. It's like, especially if you're not used to having that great a communication there.
Exactly.
So you had mentioned meeting somebody online, and that brought up another question for me. So what if the person that you meet doesn't look like their photos. What do you say something? Do you go forward with it? I'm sure it depends on how they are otherwise, but
yeah, luckily I have not had this issue.
Okay.
Personally, but I know a lot of people, like most of the people that I go on dates with, I'll say like, have you ever been catfished? Most of them say yes. And so what I've heard, like, I think etiquette would just be like, have a drink, go for the planned walk, whatever it's going to be, and then just say, it was so nice to meet you, goodbye. Because I feel like if someone lies about their photos, then their intentions may not be very clear, especially if it's a man. But I would always say, like, give the person a chance. I don't know. Like, see if you can learn something from them. I see dates as a way to learn something from people. Like, at the end of the day, I walk away from a date, even if I don't think I'm ever going to see the person again. It's like I walk away from every interaction with a new perception about life, with a new understanding of what that person does for work. It gives me a new lens into the world. So just I think people go into dates so seriously, and yes, of course it can be serious, but like, what if you're just meeting people to learn about the world?
Yeah. And it takes the pressure off that way too. It's just kind of like, hey, here's another human,
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So and probably the biggest topic I want to talk about today is self-pleasure. Now, this is another area that I think especially women have gotten a lot of shame for. I mean, there was a time in our history when doctors said women couldn't even get off. Like, you are here to make babies and make your man happy. That is your goal.
Yeah.
And now we obviously know differently. And obviously different women have different experiences as well. I'll just start with a really simple question, but why is self-pleasure so important to you? Not just you, but your clients. Why should this be something important for women?
Oh my gosh. Because you have to know your body. You have to love your body in a way that nobody else does. Like, that is number one, is just, if you do not know your body, if you do not know what you like, if you are uncomfortable with the way that your vagina looks, the way your body looks, the way your butthole looks, whatever it is, there's no amount of, there is nobody in the world that can feel the way you do about your body. So if you're struggling with your self-pleasure, with your love for yourself, it's very difficult to find that anywhere else. So also, it's special. Like, having time by yourself with your clit, with your vagina, with your vulva, with your whole female reproductive system is something that it's a treat. It's special. It's something that you get to have, and only you get to have it. So having that time with you is beyond just pleasure. It's beyond getting off. It's beyond an orgasm. It really is divine, and it's self-love. And so that is why I encourage everybody that I talk with to not only masturbate, but to watch themselves masturbate.
I was just going to ask you that.
Like, watch yourself. And it's hard, but I write about this at length because the first time I ever watched myself masturbate was years ago, and I literally cried. Like, I had never seen my own vagina pulse like that. I had never seen her get wet. Like, I had never seen anything like that happen. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is like, it's the essence of me. It's the essence. I mean, I have some pretty crazy self-love situation. Like, I literally sage my vagina. After I have sex with anybody, I sage my vagina. Not like burning it, but like the smoke, because it's like I'm cleansing myself. Like, when you think about your anatomy, the very center of you is your reproductive system. It's your vagina or your penis. It's the area. It's like, it's an interesting spot on your body because it's connected to your torso, but it kind of is also connected to your legs. And so it's this very beautiful center of who you are. And so literally just holding your vagina, like, when was the last time that you just held your vulva in your hand? Like, guys touch their dicks, their balls all the time. We don't really scratch our own vagina. Like, we don't, it's not ladylike to do that stuff. Like, we don't even pick wedgies in public or veggies. So touching ourselves, holding ourselves, giving ourselves orgasms it's chef's kiss, baby.
And I love it. Like when so many things you were saying gave me chills. Like even when you were talking about the first time you masturbated in front of the mirror and watched yourself. I remember many years ago when I was going to counseling and my therapist had suggested I simply stand in front of the mirror naked, like not even taking it that far to masturbating, but just stand there. And I remember crying. Like, I remember, like, I don't want to do it. There's so much fear. I don't want to see my body. I don't like what I see. You know, all this negative talk. And I do remember at one point, once we had gotten past, okay, you're standing up and down and look at your boobs, you know, look at all these different parts and pay attention to them. And then the next phase was, okay, now you get to sit on the floor with your legs open. And I was just like, no way. I'm not doing it. Like I am so, and I don't even know if I know the word for it. Is it shame? Is it embarrassment? It's probably all the things, but it was just like, almost like I wasn't even worthy. Like that part of me was disconnected, that like that was a thing and I'm a thing and they just happen to be on the same thing called my body. It's just so interesting because I know that like there's a lot of women that struggle with shame around that and a lot of women that just really like, you know, it's hard for them to get outside of that comfort zone.
Your experience, what you just said, is it's so raw and it's so real for so many women.
Yeah.
I would say maybe like, I don't even like to quantify it. Almost nobody looks at their own vagina. Almost nobody. I mean, when I suggest this, people turn red in the face, people get tears in their eyes because we have so much repressed shame. And really what it is that we've been turning away from that part of ourselves for so long. And inside, we think there's something wrong with it. We think there's something dirty about it. We think that there's something that it needs to be cleaner, smell differently, look differently. A lot of us have trauma around that area. And so you feel like that area wasn't a part of you because you disconnected from her so that when things were happening, you didn't have to think about it. And so to look at your own, I always say you should know your vulva like you know your face. You know every inch of your face. You would know if you got a new freckle. You would know if you got a new mole. We need to feel that comfortable with our vulvas.
Yeah. It's so powerful. And it's so like, it's kind of sad to me that this isn't more popular, but at the same time, that's what you're here for.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
I love it. So what about toys? Like, I feel like, you know, obviously this can be something used as a tool at home. It can be something that's brought into the bedroom with a partner. Every person is different, but I feel like I kind of know what you feel about toys, but I'd love to hear it on the podcast.
Yeah, I love toys. And, you know, I was just thinking about this today while I was masturbating, by the way, that I didn't realize that my body can experience all these different kinds of orgasms. And it's so exciting. I mean, I get toys a lot for promo material. You know, I was just thinking, I have so many toys and I've tried most of them. Some of them I haven't tried. And I'm like, should I do a giveaway? Because it's like I have so many that now I know kind of my favorites. And so it's exciting to get new toys to explore. And I always recommend, like, even if you're in a marriage, get a toy that's just for you. Like, even if you have toys that you use, you know, while you're having sex, have a toy that's just for you, that you can have still a self-pleasure practice while you're married or while you're in a relationship. But I love toys. And I wrote a toy guide if anybody wants to look further, because I like bullet vibrators because I think they're super simple and it's fantastic to feel yourself have an orgasm. When you're holding a bullet, it's smaller. So you can kind of feel the warmth of yourself. You can feel when you're getting wet. You can feel all of that. And it's really, I think it's a turn on. And then I like wand vibrators that don't have a moving head. I like them when they're like a stick, almost like a pen. For some reason, that just feels great for me. But I grind into my toys. A lot of people move the toy. A lot of people go back and forth. So you just have to find what you like.
Yeah, and I love that you're bringing up these different ways to use toys too, because I think that this is another thing. It's not one size fits all sort of situation. And I think, the one thing that keeps popping in my mind when we're talking about types of vaginas and shapes and looks and toys and penises and all this stuff is I think the one reference most of us can go back to is like, oh, I saw an episode of a porno. I saw, and there's obviously things are very different there, and it is an act. Yes. And, there's certain people that are picked for certain parts, and there's some acting going on as well. So let's not expect that every one of our situations is going to look like that, or maybe none of them, right?
They barely will ever look like that. I mean, let's be real. That'll basically never happen, because I posted it on the Sexton the other day. It's like porn is literally just watching people at work. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's what it is. You're not actually watching a pleasure-filled experience unless you're watching some feminist porn. But even then, it's in a studio. It's being shot. I think OnlyFans is probably a great way to see it. But still, there's an element of performance, because if you were watching porn where people were just naturally getting off, it would be under their covers in the dark, and you would hear maybe a couple of moans. So it's... to each their own. I don't watch porn, but I think that it's important to explore it if you are into that. But definitely, we could have a whole episode about porn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I feel like we have talked about so much, but there is so much more we could go on. So obviously, we both have lives outside of here, and we both have time crunches. So I'll start to wrap it up here, and we'll just list a bunch of links to your blogs, and obviously we'll have to do another episode later.
Yes.
So let's do a shout out. You mentioned She Wolf Lauren. That's your main account. The Sexton on Instagram. Also, that's your sex account. But you also mentioned you're a sexual confidence coach. So if people are interested in your coaching services, where can they find you?
Yes, you can find me on my website, shewolflauren.com. And it's the first thing that you'll see. It says book a session with me. And that is to really help people hone in on their holistic sexual confidence. So it isn't just about what happens in the bedroom, but sexual confidence is usually part of your whole person confidence. You don't just all of a sudden feel really confident in the bedroom if you're feeling self-conscious everywhere else,
I love that.
It's about you as a holistic person. I help you communicate better. I help you have better relationships. And then naturally having a very positive relationship with yourself and your sexuality is part of that. So I offer those. And then I also write a Monday blog, which comes out every Monday. Can you believe it? Monday blog every Monday. Yeah, every Monday. And that is... the topics range from me helping you have better self-talk to me talking about my first experience at a sex club and having sex with 6 people in one night. So
yes.
Yeah, it's all of the above on the blog. I don't hold back.
I love it. Gosh, Lauren, thank you so much for sharing your story, diving into some little tips and tricks. And of course, we'll leave everyone with the links so they can check out more of you. Yes. Such a pleasure having you as my first guest.
Thank you. I was so honored. I could almost cry. I'm so grateful. I feel like I have so much more to say too. So we'll have to do another episode down the road, but thank you. And hi to everybody that's listening. And thank you all. This is so fun.
And thank you everybody who's listening, as Lauren said. So we have actually set up a Patreon page for the podcast. If you like what you're hearing right now and you want to hear more, help me keep it going by following the Limitless Ladies in Leadership on Patreon. I will list that link in the description as well. Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, everybody. And we will catch you on our next episode. Thank you so much for listening. You can find more episodes on the website at www.limitlessladiesinleadership.com. To support the podcast and keep episodes coming, check out Patreon at Limitless Ladies in Leadership. To keep updated with new episodes, give the podcast a follow on Facebook and Instagram at Limitless Ladies in Leadership. Thanks again for tuning in, and I can't wait for our next show.